The wind howled through the jagged canyons of Baroness 4, whipping up red dust that stung the eyes and coated the skin like ash. Dane Calder didn't flinch. He'd stopped reacting to the environment months ago. It was all the same: heat, wind, grit, and silence. The planet didn't care if you bled, begged, or screamed. It only offered one thing: indifference. He crouched by the crumpled form half buried in the sand, heart pounding harder than it had when he'd run from pirates, regulators, or debt collectors. What lay before him wasn't a man or a machine. It was something ancient, wounded, and alive. Massive, easily the size of a speeder truck, the creature's obsidian black hide shimmered faintly in the harsh sunlight, like armor carved from night itself. Blood-thick, iridescent, and foreign leaked from a gash in its side, pooling in the sand. One of its 6 legs twitched, dragging jagged furrows through the dust. Its breathing was shallow, rasping, almost drowned out by the wind. Dane's instincts screamed at him to back away. Run. Hide. Report it, maybe. Sell the coordinates and let some biologist or warlord handle it. But his boots didn't move. His hands did. He dropped his gear pack, kneeling beside the beast and ignoring the adrenaline telling him he was a damn fool. "You're not from around here," he muttered, voice low, half to himself. "Neither am I." The creature's eye, just one, lidless and silver like quicksilver, turned to look at him. Not a glance. A deliberate, calculated look. That was the moment Dane realized this wasn't an animal. It was someone. He swallowed and slowly reached for his flask, uncorking it and holding it out. The beast didn't drink, but it didn't lash out either. It just watched him. Watched everything. Dane set to work. Hours passed. He sterilized what he could with heat and alcohol, bandaged the gash with strips torn from his undershirt, rigged a temporary brace for a fractured limb. It was crude, fieldwork medicine at best, but enough to stabilize it, he hoped. At some point, the creature closed its eye and slept. Dane didn't. He stayed close, sitting with his back against a rock, rifle in reach, listening to the whistle of wind and the distant, shrieking calls of scavengers overhead. He didn't light a fire. The smoke would attract attention. He'd already risked too much. This sector was supposedly uninhabited. That was a lie. Everything beyond the fringe always was. He looked at the beast again. It hadn't stirred. Whatever had hurt it had done so with force and precision. Plasma burns marred its side, military grade. This wasn't a predator's wound. This was a targeted strike. He rubbed his temples. If someone had tried to kill it, then saving it wasn't just foolish, it was probably suicidal. "I should have left you there," he whispered. The wind didn't answer. The beast, however, let out a low, rattling exhale. Not quite a growl, not quite a sigh, something in between. Dane couldn't tell if it was in pain or acknowledging him. The next morning came pale and hard. The sun rose over the canyon like a dying star, washing everything in gold and rust. Dane stirred from light sleep and checked on the beast. It was breathing, still unconscious, but the bleeding had slowed. He reached for his comm to call in his find, thumb hovering over the transmit button. Then he paused. Something in him, call it instinct, or maybe just the quiet voice that had kept him alive all these years, told him not to. Not yet. He powered the comm down and started to build a sled. 3 days passed. He fed it with protein paste and electrolyte gel, doing his best to keep its strength up. It ate. Not eagerly but willingly. It didn't speak, not in words, but Dane began to feel something unspoken taking root. It watched him closely, sometimes tracking his movements like a shadow. Other times it would lift its head as if listening for sounds he couldn't hear. The sled was finished by the 5th day, cobbled together from scrap and powered by a single sputtering grav pad. It wouldn't make it to a settlement, but it would get them to shelter. To his shelter. The creature he needed to call it something snorted as he tried to coax it onto the sled. "Easy," he murmured, hands raised. "I'm not dragging your ass across this hellscape for fun." Surprisingly, it obeyed. It was heavier than it looked, and even with the grav pad, the journey was hell. But they made it. His camp wasn't much: an old survey pod buried into the canyon wall, solar charged, sealed tight. Safe. He lowered the sled inside, powered the hatch shut, and breathed for the first time in a week. Inside, it was dim, warm, and filled with the hum of life support systems. The creature lay still in the corner, half curled like a cat too big for the couch, its breath fogging the air. Dane sat across from it, cradling a warm mug between his hands. "What are you?" he asked softly. No answer. But the eye opened again, silver and sharp. It met his gaze, then slowly, deliberately, blinked. He wasn't sure why, but the gesture made something cold melt in his chest. That night, while Dane tried to sleep, he dreamed of stars and cities of bone, of a voice clear, powerful, feminine, screaming across a battlefield, calling a name he didn't understand, and a flash of silver eyes in the darkness. The next morning, the solar array picked up something unusual. A distant transmission. Garbled, encrypted, but undeniably imperial. A woman's voice, staticky but clear enough to chill the spine. "This is Baroness V. Lyra Thorne of the Moravian Corps. All vessels in range, respond. My companion is missing. Repeat, Zara is missing. Return her and you will be rewarded. Harm her and I will burn you from orbit. Dane slowly turned to look at the creature lying peacefully in the corner. It looked back, and he finally understood. He hadn't rescued a beast. He'd just taken in the most dangerous pet in the galaxy. Dane didn't sleep after hearing the transmission. The Baroness's voice still echoed in his head, cool, sharp, and laced with menace. This wasn't some noble sobbing over a lost lapdog. It was a warning shot, delivered like a threat veiled as grief. And if the woman really was who she claimed to be, she had the power to back it up. The Moravian Corps didn't make empty promises, especially not their aristocracy. He stood in the dim light of the hab module, watching the creature Zara apparently rest. The name felt too soft for something so massive and otherworldly, but she responded to it. He could see it now, the way her head would twitch at the sound. Even asleep, she was listening. Dane muttered a curse under his breath. Of all the creatures of all the wrecked sectors of this cursed quadrant, why did he have to stumble on her? He moved to the console and began rerouting comm arrays. Shut down external transmitters, scrambled his locator ping. If any ships were tracing energy signatures, he'd make it as difficult as possible. He wasn't ready to give her up yet, not because he wanted a reward, but because every bone in his body told him that handing Zara over might not end the way the Baroness promised. Something about that voice. It was the way she said companion, not pet. The way she said burn you from orbit and not you'll be punished. This wasn't about retrieval. This was about possession. And Dane had something she wanted. He turned to Zara, who had lifted her head and was watching him. The silver eyes seemed to gleam brighter in the artificial light. There was no animal confusion in that gaze. Only awareness. You understand me, don't you? He asked. Her breathing shifted. Not a nod, but not a denial either. You know I heard her. That she's coming. Zara moved slowly and deliberately until she rested her massive head on her front limbs, eyes still locked with his. The wound on her side was healing well. Not gone, but closed, covered in a strange fibrous layer that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. She was strong enough to fight, probably. Strong enough to run. Dane exhaled, long and slow. I saved your life. That's supposed to count for something. She blinked. The faintest rise of her brow's muscle clusters above her eye that gave the impression of subtle thought. Then she shifted again, uncoiling slightly, and exposed the scar along her flank. A deliberate gesture. Trust? Vulnerability? Or was she trying to tell him something? He stepped closer, crouched beside her, and gently laid a hand against the edge of the scar tissue. There. A ripple under the skin. Not flesh. Metal. His eyes narrowed. Dane reached into his toolkit, retrieved a portable scanner, and swept it across the wound. The screen flared with noise for a moment, then resolved into a shape. An embedded transmitter. Small, sophisticated, cloaked. No wonder she'd been found. He looked into her eye again. You knew this was in you. She didn't flinch. You wanted me to find it. A low rumble vibrated in her chest. Not a growl, not warning. It almost sounded like agreement. Dane sat back on his heels, staring at the readout. The signal was faint now, probably damaged in the ambush, maybe scrambled by time and the rough journey, but it had been active. It still was, barely. The Baroness hadn't found her through chance. She was tracking Zara the whole time. He powered down the scanner and returned it to his belt. Then, slowly, he picked up his plasma knife. Do you want it out? Zara was silent. Then, without hesitation, she shifted her body, stretching slightly, exposing the site of the wound again. A clear answer. Dane didn't wait. He'd never operated on an alien before, let alone one this large, but there was no time for hesitation. He numbed the area as best he could and started cutting. The creature barely moved. Her muscles trembled beneath the blade, but not once did she snap or recoil. It was there, nestled deep, tiny, sleek, coated in a film of alien tissue like it had grown roots. Dane extracted it, sealed the incision, and tossed the transmitter into the sterilizer chamber. Then he looked back at Zara. Let's hope she doesn't get your new location before that thing goes cold. The creature stood for the first time since he'd found her. Even with the limited headroom, her presence filled the pod. 6 legs planted solidly, long tail curled behind her like a whip made of obsidian. Her head brushed the ceiling. She towered over him, but she didn't threaten. She turned toward the door. Dane hesitated. You're leaving? Zara didn't respond. She paced to the airlock, then stopped, waited, looked back at him. Dane frowned. What, you want me to come with you? She blinked slowly, then turned her whole body to face him, and growled soft, short, almost like a bark. Dane stared. You don't want to go alone. Another blink. He stepped closer, watching her. Why? You don't even know me. Zara lowered her head, nostrils flaring. Her breath ghosted across his face. Then, softly, she nudged his shoulder. He let out a laugh. It was dry, hollow, stunned. You're serious? He looked at his gear. His supplies. The compact rifle resting against the wall. The rations. He'd survived for years hopping from contract to contract, smuggling salvage, hiding from the long reach of the core. This was different. This was personal. "You want my help," he said, "but I don't know what I'm up against. I don't even know why they came for you." Zara didn't answer. She turned and with slow, graceful steps, moved back to the center of the room and lowered herself to the ground, resting again. The faint shimmer of sleep began to creep into her body posture. She wasn't leaving, and neither was he. Not yet. That night, Dane sat at the edge of his bunk, rifle across his knees, watching her. She had chosen not to kill him. He had chosen not to give her up. Whatever came next, neither of them could undo those choices. And somewhere high above, burning through the stars, a Baroness had heard her beast's trail go cold. And she was coming. The airlock hissed closed behind Dane as the last trace of daylight faded into the artificial glow of the habitat pod. Outside, the barren landscape of Baroness 4 stretched endlessly, a brutal expanse of jagged rocks, swirling dust storms and hidden dangers. Inside, the quiet hum of life support was the only thing separating them from the raw, hostile wild. Zara lay curled in the corner, her immense frame folding impossibly small to fit the cramped space. Despite her size, she seemed restless, shifting now and then with a grace that belied her bulk. Dane watched her, his mind racing with questions he dared not voice aloud. The pod wasn't designed for this: two lives, two species, forced together by fate and circumstance. For days, they had existed in uneasy proximity, Dane nursing wounds and doubts, Zara nursing silent pain and memories no human could understand. Outside, the threat of the Baroness's hunt closed in, but inside, the real challenge was surviving each other. The first night after sealing the pod, Dane had barely slept. His eyes kept darting to Zara's silver eye reflecting the dim light, watching him as intently as he watched her. Their breaths, human and alien, mingled in the recycled air, a strange rhythm of life clashing in a confined space. In the morning, Dane attempted conversation again, a habit born of desperation. "I'm not sure how this works," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "You and me, stuck here. You don't speak my language, and I don't speak yours." Zara's eye narrowed, the muscles above it twitching in what Dane guessed might be amusement or frustration. "Okay, maybe that was a stupid question." He stood and walked to the gear rack, pulling down a compact tablet. "Let's try this." He tapped open a basic translation program, fingers fumbling over the hollow keys. The device buzzed softly, projecting words in a broken dialect of the galactic common tongue. "Who are you?" Zara blinked, then slowly lifted her massive head. Her voice, when it came, was low and guttural, far deeper than Dane had expected, with a roughness like gravel sliding over stone. "I am Zara." Her voice reverberated through the small pod, shaking the thin walls. Dane instinctively stepped back, hands raised. "Right, Zara." She lowered her head again, eyes flickering with a strange mix of pride and pain. "Why are you here?" Dane asked. Her response was a slow rumble. Not words, but a sound that felt like a message, a memory. Dane frowned. He tapped the tablet again, trying to coax more from it. "Why did you come here? What happened to you?" Zara shifted, then pushed a clawed foot forward, gently tapping a worn patch of the floor where dried blood still stained the concrete. "Ambush," she growled softly. Dane's stomach clenched. He knew the type of ambush she meant: precise, brutal, designed to kill without warning. And he had walked into the aftermath. "Who attacked you?" Zara's silver eye flashed, and she growled louder, a sound layered with anger and warning. Dane held up a hand. Okay. I get it. You don't want to talk about it." Days passed, and the forced confinement began to weigh on both of them. The pod was little more than a metal box buried into rock, with a single entrance, minimal space, and scant comforts. Dane's old survey equipment cluttered one corner, while Zara's bulk took up the other. The heat regulation struggled to keep up with her body's alien metabolism, and Dane found himself constantly adjusting settings, worried about overheating. One evening, as dust storms held outside and the pod's lights flickered under the strain, Dane noticed Zara pacing restlessly. Her huge claws scraped softly against the metal floor, a sound that grated on his nerves. He moved closer. "You need to rest." She stopped, turned, and met his gaze with a sharpness that cut through the tension. It was the first real confrontation between them, no words, but a challenge, a testing of wills. Dane swallowed hard. "I'm not your enemy." For a long moment, the pod held its breath. Then, slowly, Zara lowered her head, exhaling a long, slow breath that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. He stepped back, nodding. "All right, we're stuck here, together." As days bled into nights, a fragile routine emerged. Dane would check the medkits, bring what little food he had, and monitor the pod systems. Zara would rest, or occasionally explore the small confines, her eye always alert, always watching. Sometimes in the quietest hours, Dane caught her looking at him not with suspicion or aggression, but with a flicker of something else. Trust, maybe? Or the beginning of understanding. One afternoon, Dane found her curled beside the small viewport, her breath fogging the glass. Outside, the sun scorched a desolate landscape. Dane sat beside her, silently watching the stars begin to prick the darkening sky. He spoke softly, "I don't know what you've been through, but I'm here now." Zara blinked slowly, and for a moment, the pod didn't feel so small anymore. They were confined together, trapped by circumstance, yet somehow against all odds finding space to breathe, to survive, and maybe, just maybe, to trust. The calm inside the pod shattered before dawn, ripped apart by a low rumble that vibrated through the floor and walls. Dane was awake before the first tremors reached him, heart pounding in sync with the distant thuds echoing from the canyon outside. The planet was alive and angry. The dust storm had arrived earlier than expected, faster, fiercer. Outside, the howling winds had grown into a tempest, a swirling maelstrom of razor-sharp grit and blinding fury. Dane peered through the small viewport, the glass rattling in its frame. Red dust whipped in thick curtains, visibility reduced to almost nothing. Zara stirred beside him, muscles tensing beneath her obsidian-black hide. Her silver eye snapped open, scanning the environment as if she could see beyond the storm itself. Dane clenched his fists. The storm wasn't the only danger pressing in. The encrypted comm signal he had scrambled days ago crackled faintly, broken and intermittent. Somewhere out there, someone was trying to reach them. The Baroness was close, too close. Her fleet wouldn't risk a broad assault in the storm, but small, specialized teams could infiltrate, search, and capture. And if they found Zara before Dane could figure out what she was to the Moravian core, it would mean the end for both of them. He scrambled to the console, fingers flying over controls to boost signal scramblers and shut down any unnecessary power draws. Every second counted. The pod shuddered violently, a deep groan that spoke of structural stress. The canyon walls around them shifted minutely, sending dust and small rocks cascading down into the crevices. Baroness 4 was not a forgiving place. "Storm's worse than I thought," Dane muttered, eyes flicking between readouts and the restless creature beside him. Zara growled low and sharp, a warning that seemed directed both at the storm and the unseen hunters closing in. Suddenly, the door alarm blared, a harsh, urgent cry that echoed through the cramped space. Dane's blood ran cold. The external sensors were picking up movement. Not just animals. Something else. He grabbed his plasma rifle and moved to the reinforced hatch, peering out through the armored viewport. Shadows darted between rocks, quick and calculated. "They're here," Dane whispered. Zara rose with a speed that belied her size, muscles rippling under her midnight skin. She positioned herself between Dane and the door, a living barrier. The hatch locked automatically, reinforced by the pod's emergency protocols. Outside, the storm battered the metal shell, but the real threat was the approaching footsteps, too precise to be natural. Dane tapped his comm, trying to reach anyone but the Baroness's people. The line was dead. He swallowed hard. "We're running out of time." Hours stretched thin as the external threat circled the pod, searching for any sign of life. The storm masked their heat signatures but also limited their own visibility. Dane kept the rifle close, fingers twitching with every noise. Zara's breathing slowed, but her eye never left the viewport. Suddenly, a faint crackle on the scanner. Movement, just beyond sensor range. Then a whisper of voices, distorted by the storm but unmistakable commands in a cold, clipped accent. Dane's mind raced. The Baroness's forces were organized, lethal. They'd come prepared for resistance. If they breached the pod, the only chance was to survive long enough to escape or fight back. He knelt beside Zara. "We have to get out of here. The storm's the only cover we have." Her silver eye locked on his, a silent agreement passing between them. Together, they moved to the emergency escape hatch, a cramped tunnel leading to a hidden cave system Dane had discovered during earlier scouting. It was risky, narrow and untested for heavy traffic, but it was their only chance. The storm's hull rose to a crescendo as they pried open the secondary hatch. Wind and grit slammed into them like a physical blow. Dane shielded his eyes, grabbing Zara's massive foreleg and urging her forward. The cave mouth yawned before them, dark and cold. Inside, the air was still, a sanctuary from the raging storm. But it was not safe. Dane's scanner beeped urgently, a new signal pulsed faintly from deeper within the cave. Not the Baroness's. Something else. He frowned, muscles tense. "Who else is out here?" he whispered. Zara growled low, senses alert. As they moved deeper, the cave walls closed in, and the dim glow of bioluminescent fungi illuminated twisted roots and bones, remnants of past victims or explorers who hadn't made it. Dane's heart thudded painfully. The deeper they went, the more he realized the planet itself was a living thread, an ancient ecosystem of predators and traps. They had escaped one danger only to enter another. Suddenly, a sharp hiss echoed in the darkness. Dane spun, rifle raised. A shadow lunged, slender, lithe, with glowing eyes and barbed claws. A native predator, perfectly adapted to the subterranean darkness. Zara sprang forward, muscles coiling, claws ripping through the air. The creature hissed again and dove back into the shadows, wounded but not dead. Dane's breath caught. They were caught in a deadly dance, hunted from above by the Baroness's mercenaries and from below by the primal fury of Varnus IV. Minutes felt like hours as they pressed deeper into the cave, the pulse of danger relentless. Zara's breathing grew labored, the earlier wounds still slowing her pace. Dane knew they couldn't outrun this forever. "We need a plan," he said grimly, voice barely audible over the cave's natural echoes. Zara's eye met his, fierce and determined. Whatever secrets she held, whatever power the Baroness sought, Dane realized they shared something now, a desperate fight for survival against enemies seen and unseen. And time was running out. The dim glow of the cave's bioluminescent fungi cast flickering shadows against the jagged walls as Dane and Zara pressed deeper into the labyrinth. Every step echoed softly, swallowed quickly by the cavern's vastness. Yet beneath the silence, something gnawed at Dane's mind, a truth that had been buried beneath layers of survival and uncertainty. Zara moved cautiously ahead, her massive frame surprisingly silent despite her size. Dane followed close behind, clutching his rifle tightly, senses on high alert. The earlier attack by the native predator had left them shaken but unharmed barely. Still, the weight of their pursuers and the alien environment settled heavily on both of them. Then it happened. A sudden jolt, a blur of movement, and before Dane could react, a sharp pain seared across his side. He staggered, gasping as he spun toward the source. A thin, needle-like dart protruded from his jacket. His vision blurred, muscles weakened. Zara growled, turning sharply, eyes blazing with fury. Dane's knees buckled, but her powerful bulk caught him before he fell, steadying him with surprising gentleness. "What?" he murmured, voice shaky. A voice echoed through the cavern, a cold, calm voice that sent ice crawling down Dane's spine. "Impressive," it said. "Not many can stand so long against the toxins of Varnus IV." From the shadows emerged a figure, slender and lithe, draped in dark tactical armor that blended seamlessly with the cave's gloom. The glint of a visor caught the fungal light, reflecting a calculating gaze. "You are a stubborn one, human," the figure continued. "And your beast, far more valuable than I imagined." Dane's head swam as the poison spread, and he fought to focus. Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, voice dripping with mock politeness. "I am Seren Kale, agent of the Maravian Corps, sent by the Baroness herself to reclaim what is hers." Zara growled, stepping protectively between Dane and the intruder. Her massive claws scraped the stone floor, a clear warning. Seren smiled thinly. "I don't wish to harm you, creature. But I must remind you resistance is futile. The Baroness will not be denied." Dane's mind raced. The truth hit like a thunderclap. The transmitter embedded in Zara was more than a tracker, it was a failsafe, a beacon, a tether that bound her to the Baroness's will. But why? Before Dane could question further, Seren raised a device sleek and humming with energy and aimed it at Zara. The creature snarled, muscles coiling to strike. "Wait." Dane gasped, staggering forward despite the toxin's grip. "She's not just a pet. She's more. You don't understand." Seren's eyes narrowed beneath the visor. "Enlighten me." Dane forced himself to sit upright, breathing ragged but mind sharp. "Zara is bonded to the Baroness, yes, but not by control, by choice. She carries secrets, memories, knowledge from a time before the Corps' rise. That transmitter, it's not just a leash, it's a key." Seren laughed, a cold sound that echoed eerily. "Legends and myths won't save you. The Corps needs her back. You have delayed the inevitable." Suddenly, a shift in the cave's atmosphere, a subtle vibration underfoot. Zara's eye flashed brighter, muscles tensing like a coiled spring. Dane followed her gaze and saw the cavern walls beginning to shimmer, ancient runes glowing faintly, awakening from a long slumber. Zara stepped forward, touching the wall with her massive paw. The symbols pulsed, responding to her presence. Seren's face hardened. "You don't know what you're meddling with." But Dane did. The legends whispered among smugglers and old explorers spoke of the old world's ancient civilizations with power beyond comprehension, tied to creatures like Zara. The beast was not merely a pet or prisoner, she was a guardian, a relic of forgotten times. The cavern trembled, and a hidden passage opened, a gateway long sealed. Zara growled, stepping into the light that poured from within. Dane felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. "This changes everything," he whispered. Seren's weapon hummed, aimed at the glowing passage. "No, it only hastens the end." The toxin in Dane's veins clouded his vision, but clarity burned in his mind. The fight was no longer just for survival. It was for the truth buried in shadows and secrets. For the bond between a man and a beast stronger than chains. For a future neither the Baroness nor the Corps had ever imagined. As the passage beckoned, Dane and Zara faced a choice: surrender to the forces hunting them, or step into the unknown together toward a destiny neither could foresee. The cave swallowed them in light and shadow, and the story shifted forever. The hidden passage closed behind them with a low rumble, sealing Dane and Zara inside a vast chamber bathed in a soft, otherworldly glow. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and something else ancient, powerful, alive. For the first time since their ordeal began, the oppressive weight of fear seemed to ease, replaced by a fragile thread of something unspoken hope. Dane took a tentative step forward, his breath catching as the chamber's walls revealed intricate carvings, scenes of creatures and beings long forgotten, their forms intertwined in an elegant dance of life and power. Zara's silver eye roamed the carvings, a flicker of recognition passing through her gaze, her heavy frame settling into a calm stance. The tension between them, once sharp and defensive, softened. Dane felt it too, the invisible walls between human and alien, predator and prey, beginning to crumble. He knelt by a shallow pool that reflected the chamber's light, fingers tracing the rippling water. This place, it's more than just a cave. It's a sanctuary. Zara lowered her massive head beside him, nostrils flaring as she inhaled the chamber's air. The motion was gentle, almost reverent. You carry their legacy, Dane said softly. You're not just surviving, you're guarding something precious. Her eye met his, and in that moment, vulnerability surfaced in the depths of her gaze. The pride and fury that had defined her presence gave way to something rawer, more human, if such a word could ever apply to a creature so alien. Dane reached out hesitantly, brushing a finger along the rough texture of her scaled forearm. The contact was electric, bridging the gap that words never could. Zara didn't pull away. Instead, she exhaled a low, rumbling breath that felt like acceptance. For hours they lingered in the chamber, sharing silence and stories without speaking. Dane recounted his past, the small town he grew up in, the dreams he'd abandoned for the harsh realities of space exploration. Zara's responses were more subtle, a tilt of her head, a flicker of her tail, the occasional low rumble that Dane took as acknowledgement. Trust was no longer an obstacle, it was a fragile bond being woven between two unlikely allies. The chamber's energy seemed to nurture this connection, as if the very stones remembered the unity of beings once thought irreconcilable. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the cave, Dane and Zara found a rare peace. When night fell outside, the chamber's glow deepened, casting soft light on the unlikely pair. Dane lay back against the stone floor, fatigue pulling at his limbs, but his mind was restless. Zara curled nearby, her breathing steady, the rhythm of her chest a steady drumbeat in the quiet. He realized that the beast he'd once seen as a threat had become a guardian of secrets, of survival, of something greater than either of them. In the days that followed, their collaboration grew more instinctive. Dane learned to read Zara's subtle cues, the way her body shifted when danger approached, how her senses could detect threats long before his own. Zara, in turn, seemed to understand Dane's resilience and ingenuity, trusting him to navigate the complexities of technology and strategy. They shared the burdens of their predicament, each lending strength where the other faltered. One evening, as Dane prepared a simple meal from their limited supplies, Zara approached with a carefully chosen gift, a smooth stone etched with ancient markings, its surface glowing faintly under the chamber's light. Dane accepted it with a grateful nod, sensing the significance beyond the physical object. It's a symbol, he said softly, of trust, of alliance. Zara's eye gleamed, a silent affirmation. In this hidden sanctuary, away from hunters and storms, a new chapter began, one not defined by fear or survival alone, but by a bond forged in the crucible of adversity. Together, Dane and Zara were no longer just human and beast, they were partners, bound by a shared purpose that transcended species and history. And as the storm outside finally began to wane, a fragile hope blossomed in the hearts of two beings once worlds apart. The fragile calm that had settled over the hidden chamber shattered without warning. Dane was jolted awake by the distant, echoing rumble of explosions. The cave trembled beneath his feet, dust raining down from the ceiling as the sharp crackle of energy weapons sliced through the silence. Outside, the storm had finally broken, but it brought with it something far worse. The Baroness's forces had found them. Zara's growl was low and fierce as she rose to her full imposing height, muscles coiling like springs ready to snap. The alliance forged in the sanctuary now faced its greatest test. Dane scrambled to his feet, heart pounding in sync with the pounding footsteps and the shrill alarms that suddenly rang through the cave system's narrow tunnels. We've been compromised, Dane hissed, eyes scanning for the quickest escape route. But the corridors outside the chamber were already crawling with hostile figures, moving with brutal efficiency and chilling precision. Seren Kale's voice crackled through the comlink Dane had managed to reactivate. Surrender now. The Baroness offers you mercy if you cooperate. Dane's fingers tightened around his rifle. Mercy was a lie, a weapon as sharp and deadly as any blade. No deal, he growled back. We fight. Zara's silver eye blazed with fury as she charged toward the entrance, tearing through the first wave of enemies with overwhelming force. Her claws raked through armor, her powerful jaws snapping shut on weapons and limbs alike. The mercenaries faltered but quickly regrouped, firing plasma bolts that lit up the cavern in bursts of deadly light. Despite their combined strength, the numbers were against them. The mercenaries advanced with unrelenting determination, their tactics honed by years of conflict. Dane ducked behind a rock outcrop, trading fire with a squad that pressed too close. His breath was ragged, muscles screaming from exhaustion, but retreat was impossible. Suddenly, a sharp explosion rocked the cave, sending a spray of debris into the air. Dane was thrown to the ground, ears ringing, vision blurred. When he looked up, Zara was pinned beneath a fallen boulder, her powerful form trapped and struggling to free herself. "No!" Dane shouted, scrambling to her side. His hands worked feverishly to shift the heavy stone, muscles straining as the mercenaries closed in. Saran Kale emerged from the shadows, weapon raised, a cruel smile twisting her lips. "You could have spared yourself this," she said coldly. "Now it ends." Dane's gaze hardened. "Not while I still breathe." With a surge of desperate strength, he pushed the boulder enough for Zara to wrench free a claw. She roared, pain and rage fueling her, and launched herself at Saran with ferocious speed. The agent barely dodged, firing off a series of shots that burned through the air, but missed their mark. The distraction gave Dane the moment he needed to regroup and press forward, firing his rifle with renewed purpose. The mercenaries faltered again, caught off guard by the sudden ferocity of their opponents. But the cost was clear. Zara's wounds from earlier, already slow to heal, were deepened by the crushing weight and the relentless assault. Blood stained the cave floor, her breathing labored. As the fight dragged on, a heavy silence fell over the chamber. The Baroness's forces began to retreat, pulling back under orders as reinforcements failed to arrive. Dane knelt beside Zara, hands trembling as he pressed makeshift bandages to her wounds. "We lost," he whispered, voice thick with grief. Zara's silver eye met his, unwavering despite the pain. The bond between them was tested and scarred, but unbroken. In the shadows of the cave, Dane realized that this defeat was only the beginning of a much darker struggle, one that would demand every ounce of strength, courage, and trust they had left. The nightmare was far from over. The cave fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the ragged breaths Dane took as he sat beside Zara, her massive form weakened but still breathing. The fight had ended in retreat, but the scars left behind weighed on them, both physical wounds, yes, but also the deeper fractures in trust and hope. Dane pressed a cool cloth to one of her bleeding wounds, feeling the tremor in his own hands, the echo of failure settling deep in his chest. He stared into the flickering shadows cast by the bioluminescent fungi on the cave walls, lost in a storm of thoughts. The Baroness's forces were relentless, and their setback had shown just how dangerous the hunt had become. But beyond that, Dane grappled with his own doubts about his ability to protect Zara, to face the unknown, and to hold on to the fragile alliance they had built. Zara's breathing slowed, her eye half-lidded in exhaustion, yet there was a quiet strength in her presence that steadied him. He reached out once more, running a careful hand along her scaled forearm, feeling the pulse of life beneath the rough surface. It was a gesture of reassurance both for her and for himself. As the hours passed, Dane's mind sifted through everything they had endured, searching for clarity in the chaos. The ancient chamber around them, with its glowing runes and silent history, seemed to watch over them like a sentinel. He realized that this place was more than a refuge, it was a reminder that they were part of a larger story, one that stretched far beyond their own struggle. The bond between them deepened in the quiet moments. Dane shared fragments of his past, the loneliness of a childhood spent dreaming beyond Earth's skies, the regrets and sacrifices that had shaped him. He spoke of his fears and hopes, laying bare the vulnerabilities he rarely admitted even to himself. Zara listened, her presence a steadying anchor. Though she could not speak as humans did, her subtle movements, the tilt of her head, the gentle rumble vibrating in her throat spoke volumes. She, too, bore the weight of memories and loss, the burden of being both guardian and prisoner. In this shared space, understanding grew. Dane began to see Zara not just as a creature to protect, but as a partner to respect, a being with its own fears, desires, and strength. The night deepened, and with it came a profound realization: survival alone was no longer enough. They needed a purpose, a plan that honored the bond they had forged and the legacy they guarded. Dane stood, resolve hardening in his eyes. He would find a way to outwit the Baroness's forces, to protect Zara and unlock the secrets hidden in the ancient ruins. Together, they could face the darkness ahead not as hunter and prey, but as allies bound by trust and shared destiny. As dawn's first light filtered through the cave entrance, Dane took a deep breath and met Zara's gaze. The road ahead would be perilous, but they would walk it side by side, stronger for the trials behind them and ready for the battles yet to come. The moment had arrived. Dane and Zara stood at the threshold of the ancient ruins, the air thick with the hum of dormant power awakening. The soft glow of the bioluminescent fungi was replaced by the harsh, metallic gleam of the Baroness's forces surrounding them, weapons raised, eyes cold and merciless. This was the final confrontation, the last stand between those who sought to control the past and those who fought to protect it. Dane's heart pounded fiercely as he tightened his grip on his rifle. Beside him, Zara's massive form was coiled with raw energy, her silver eye locked on the enemy like a predator ready to strike. They moved with an unspoken understanding, a synchronization born from countless battles and shared hardship. The Baroness's voice crackled over the comms, dripping with icy authority. "Surrender now, and you may yet live. The secrets of these ruins belong to me." Dane's jaw clenched. They belonged to no one who would use them for destruction. With a roar that shook the very ground beneath them, Zara charged, breaking the enemy's formation with terrifying speed. Energy blasts erupted, carving the air as Dane covered her flank, picking off soldiers with precision and grit. The cave walls reverberated with the cacophony of battle, the clash of wills as old as time itself. Amidst the chaos, Dane spotted Kale, calm and deadly, weaving through the melee with practiced ease. Their eyes met, and a silent challenge passed between them, two forces locked in a dance of fate. As Dane fought forward, the ancient runes on the ruins pulsed violently, responding to Zara's presence. The secrets hidden for centuries began to stir, awakening the power that had long lain dormant. The chamber beneath the ruins trembled, fissures splitting the stone floor as energy surged. Suddenly, a brilliant light erupted from the heart of the ruins, blinding and magnificent. Dane shielded his eyes, feeling the raw force ripple through his very being. The ancient power was alive, and it was choosing its guardians. In that moment, the tide shifted. The Baroness's forces faltered, their weapons faltering under the overwhelming surge. Dane and Zara pressed their advantage, united and unstoppable. Kale made one final desperate attempt, lunging toward Dane with a blade humming with lethal energy. But Zara intercepted, her powerful jaws snapping shut just inches from Dane's throat. The agent stumbled, defeated. As silence settled over the battlefield, Dane and Zara stood victorious but not unscathed. The ruins' power hummed softly around them, a promise of hope and renewal. With the Baroness's forces driven back, Dane reached out and placed a hand on Zara's scaled shoulder, a silent vow passing between them. They had fought not just for survival, but for the future, a future where the bond between human and beast could forge a new legacy. And as the ruins' light bathed them in its ancient glow, Dane knew this was only the beginning. The secrets they had awakened would change everything, and they would face whatever came next, together. The dust settled slowly over the ruins, the echoes of battle fading into a heavy silence that felt almost sacred. Dane stood beside Zara, their breaths still ragged, bodies bruised but spirits unbroken. The glow from the ancient runes cast a gentle light across the cavern, illuminating the scars left by the fight and the promise of a new beginning. For a moment, Dane allowed himself to feel the weight of victory, a hard-won triumph against overwhelming odds. Yet beneath that victory lay questions, deeper and more unsettling. The power they had awakened was ancient and vast, its purpose unknown, and the Baroness's ambitions had not been extinguished, only driven underground. Zara's silver eye reflected the soft light as she lowered her massive head toward Dane, a gesture of trust and connection that no longer needed words. Together, they had transcended the boundaries that once defined them, human and beast, guardian and captive, and forged a bond stronger than either could have imagined. Dane reached out, his hand resting gently on the rough scales of her shoulder. The contact was a promise, a silent vow that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. As he looked out beyond the ruins, the horizon hinted at both danger and hope. The Baroness's network was vast, and her desire for control relentless, but so was the resolve kindled in their hearts. The chamber's light flickered softly, echoing the rhythm of their shared breath. Dane knew their journey was far from over. There were secrets yet to uncover, alliances to forge, and battles to fight. But for now, in this quiet moment of peace, they had each other, and that was enough to kindle a spark of hope. A faint breeze stirred at the cave's entrance, carrying with it the scent of the unknown. Dane took a steadying breath and met Zara's gaze once more. Together, they would walk into that unknown, ready for whatever challenges awaited. The ancient power hummed softly, a reminder that history was not just to be preserved but to be shaped. Their story, intertwined with the legacy of the past and the promise of the future, was just beginning. And as the first light of a new day spilled into the chamber, Dane whispered, "We're ready." The ruins held their secrets close, but Dane and Zara held something greater: trust, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of allies united against the darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it together.